What's up, guys? It's From the Middle. I am Corey Hubble.
I'm Dylan Hubble.
I'm Kendall A. Lilla.
And we are middle-class guys living in the middle of America in the middle chapters of our lives with a point of view that's somewhere in the middle. Episode 2. Episode 2, baby.
Episode 2.
That was a really weird intro. I love you both so much. Here I thought I was the village idiot. This is great.
Yeah. This is the second time I've met Dylan. I've known Corey for a while, and I feel like we're days away from having a matching pajama sleepover.
Only if we can all agree on the print.
Oh, that's awesome.
So I think we've got to start with a spoiler warning. Is that right?
Do we know?
And what is a spoiler warning for the audience that might not know what that is?
We're about to say stuff that you might not want to hear if you haven't seen a certain film and you don't want to hear the end of the film or other plot points of the film before you see the film.
Great.
Very good.
Yeah, I feel good about that. I mean, not the Webster version, but yeah, I think on point. So a little bit of a spoiler warning.
For what film? What are we
this is going to be ultimately the whole Marvel Cinematic Universe, right?
Oh.
But specifically Avengers Endgame. And I just want to talk about it a little bit. So this has obviously been such a big thing that's been happening, not only for 11 years, but weeks now, multiple weeks. I don't know how long it's been. A while. It's been out. Hopefully you've had a chance to watch it if you were going to watch it. I don't want to tell anyone to not listen, but if you haven't seen it, go watch it, then come back and listen. Because we just wanted to talk about it. It's such a big deal.
Yeah, and what's cool is it's had some time to settle in our spirits and in our souls.
Yeah.
So
Deep.
so our initial reaction that probably would have been somewhat escalated. We've had some time to simmer down now.
Yep. I think it hit me, just to kind of preface me, before I went into the movie. I went on the Saturday after it launched in theaters, so days after like the world premiere. And I don't want to make this like feel so huge, right? Because like life is going to go on with or without these movies. But it kind of hit me the night before I went to see it that, you know, we're in the middle of life. I've spent over a third of my life watching these movies, so that's a long time. And this is a huge, really culmination of 11 years worth of ongoing plot and character development that we were going to watch unfold across 3 hours. Which was funny that all the news was like citing like bathroom breaks and here's when to go. And he said, I thought it was so weird. I'm like, didn't we all just watch Lord of the Rings and they're like 16 hours a piece? Like, why all of a sudden can we not hold our bladders like during a single movie? I mean, if you're pregnant or whatever, fine. But like for any normal person, I don't understand. But anyway, so I'm having this moment the night before when I'm realizing like this is the culmination of many movies and lots of hours spent watching this.
21 movies.
20 plus, 11 years. And then it also hit me because I just watched the trailer for Rise of Skywalker. We might talk about that. Star Wars Episode 9. That both of these are two of the biggest fandoms that I'm in. As far as things that I enjoy watching. I love movies, love TV, but these are two of the biggest. I'm going to see the culmination of 11 years worth of Marvel character and plot development. And I'm going to see the culmination of 40 years worth of Star Wars films across 9 episodes and countless other forms of media, all in the same year of my life.
It's a good year.
I'm not sure that there's going to be
but not to build it up too much.
I mean,
so it was fine in the movie. And
you've had a kid, yet this is how you feel about
Look, I said I'm not going to build this up into something bigger than it is. However,
let me just throw in a quick little thing out here, because there are some listeners, I believe, in Syria who might not get to see feature films such as this.
Yeah.
And to those people, I will say this. Just as well, I mean, okay, so if you listened to the first episode, we talked a little bit about how we don't want to, we're not necessarily polarizing kinds of people. I'm about to say something that might be kind of polarizing.
Ruh-roh.
I have not seen Endgame. I have no plans to see Endgame. I'm okay with this. It is dead quiet in here right now. I don't know if you guys.
I am a reasonable person with a clenched fist. Okay. And it's fine if you don't want to enjoy your life in any way, shape, or form.
Listen. So if there are people who are listening to this podcast, partly because you listened to the first one, and you're thinking, great, this is the kind of podcast. Let me tell you that at least when it comes to Marvel movies, I am with you. You are my people. And I will be your voice, not necessarily an antagonist voice.
Thank you.
But I'm going to help clarify things because I'm not going to know what the hell these guys are talking about. So,
and you're not. It's not it's not even an anti-Marvel thing. You're not into the DC characters.
No.
Really
Yeah, no. I'm not. I don't even.
You're just
care
not
about
a superhero film.
I'm
person.
not a super. I saw Iron Man 2, and that was the last superhero film that I have seen,
like 9 years ago or something.
Exactly.
Yeah,
and by then, like I had seen like X-Men movies and things, and I just got to a point where I was like, you know what? I'm done.
It's totally fine. So in episode 3, when Kendall talks again,
that's fair.
he'll be able to add some value in some way, shape, or form. Until then.
But that's great. That's great context setting for what we talked about. There will be times when our interest in any one topic peaks or tips the scale in one direction, and we need that third voice to tamper.
Yeah,
to tamper us a little bit.
Visually, since you're listening, imagine a triangular platform with a kind of center point holding it up, and as weight is added on one subject or another, it's pulling these 3 points in different directions. And so, no, in all seriousness, Kendall's going to be that kind of voice, and we're not going to be exclusively Marvel or Star Wars or whatever. We talked about being a lot of geek culture, but all of us enjoy movies and TV and the storytelling and character development that comes along with that. This just, for my interests, happens to be a very big year cinematically. I love going to the theater. I love watching movies and TV at home with my surround sound because it's such an immersive, fun experience having a story told to you that's interesting and has some action and love and just those kind of human elements that we can all relate to. So
perfect.
For me, this is a big year cinematically. I think there's a lot of people in our age range, and of all ages, but especially our age range, that are very much into both of those universes, the Star Wars and Marvel. So if anyone can relate, it dawned on me the day before I saw it that this was a big year for my fandoms.
Yeah.
So with that said, I think 2 of us have seen it now. A lot of you have probably seen it or heard about it. You've seen news, maybe people on interview talk shows, news shows, whatever, being interviewed. It was obviously a big thing. They couldn't talk about it at all because it's an 11-year buildup. So none of the cast that are being interviewed, imagine these normal kind of press junkets where they're going around and, the movie's going to be great. And here's a snippet of the movie. They can't even talk about it. They don't even know why they're in these interviews other than to say, just go pay to see it because we've worked really hard on this for a long time. So I'll just start by saying I absolutely loved it. I was blown away by the fact that and as in kind of a big picture review, I'm blown away by the fact that somehow they were able to continue upping the quality of the storytelling and the spectacle of it all. I wouldn't say by huge margins. I wouldn't say Endgame was vastly superior to every other movie, but somehow over 11 years as a whole, they were able to keep consistently being just a little better and a little better than the last movie. And so I just thought it was fantastic. I can't wait to see what they do with the next phase. We've built up to a point now where I would say any fan needs to expect a kind of reset. Like it can't be this big forever with this massive buildup. Right. And for anyone that would say they have superhero fatigue, I certainly understand. But I told a good friend of mine who was kind of burnt out before Infinity War, I said, if you grew up with these characters at all, you never imagined being able to watch this unfold. And it's not going to last forever. And at some point, box office numbers will go down and these studios will go into kind of a dark period for back to just cartoons or whatever. And so enjoy it while it lasts because this is such a rare thing that Marvel has done in this buildup.
So I mean, to step up a level, this is really unprecedented, right? I mean, there's not really been a franchise that's built over 20 movies in 11 years to one sort of climactic end, right?
Yeah, I'm sure I'm going to annoy fans of some fandom somewhere. The closest thing I can think of in universe building is Star Trek.
Yeah.
I mean, there's next generation movies. There's all the most of those seasons or series had 7 seasons. So between the big screen and small screen, it's a massive visual world that you can kind of watch through. I can't think of anything like this, though. I mean, there were several things that had big trilogies. You know, we had the even Spider-Man trilogy. We've had action movie trilogies. We've had other things, Back to the Future, sci-fi.
Lord of the Rings.
You know, with The Hobbit, it got 6 films total. But I can't think of anything across an 11-year or more, 10-plus year period. You know, Star Trek has got to be the close thing. As someone who also enjoys Star Trek, I still don't think there's anything that's been like the Marvel Universe.
Well, the Bond films had a really long run, but they didn't really
but
weave.
they're individual deals.
Right.
And
They didn't
Yeah.
weave in and out of each other like this did, where characters would pop in and out of a film, of a character's story, and it was all building and building and building and building. So do you think some of your enthusiasm from the beginning is clear, as is mine. I'm probably less... I love the Marvel films, but like you really love them.
Yeah,
do you think some of that is an emotional, like it felt so big because each one was building? So how much can you almost remove yourself from each film and go, I love this because I'm 19 films, 20 films in. I love it more than I would if I were just coming into it in the last year or two.
or if they were standalone.
Does the question make sense? Like, do you love it because you love it?
Yeah, I get kind of what you're asking. I think for me, it's just, I guess the response is almost, why do I have to view it that way? Like, it just is what it is. I can enjoy it because there's 60 hours worth of content that I can just pour
the
into.
similarities between the love of these films and people's children is just astounding.
Yeah, it's amazing. And
I love them because I gotta, and they grow up so fast. So pay attention while they're here.
yeah,
Someday they're gonna move out.
spot on.
And so,
Our priorities might be out of whack.
Yeah, they're not. So, anyways, I mean, but obviously Star Wars is a big universe too. But
Sure.
the hard thing there is it's 40 years apart, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, like, no matter how good George Lucas did or did not do with the prequels, or Disney might have tried to do with the sequel films. If you're a layperson, that would be the Star Wars that started in 99 through something like 2003 or 5. And then the newest Star Wars movies, now Disney owns them, that they've made in the last couple of years. No matter how hard they try, if you were a fan of the originals, you're never going to say anything's better, because it just can't be. It's the original Star Wars. It's iconic. Even if there's elements of it that are better in other trilogies, I don't think you have to like one and not like the other. I enjoy all of them.
Sure.
But it's just, you know, they don't have to like anything else. So I think I don't have to pull it apart.
That's fair.
I can just love it, and you can vouch for the fact that obviously we're brothers. So we've known each other our whole lives. I've loved Captain America and Thor, 2 of my 3 favorite superheroes, the last one being Gambit.
Yep.
I've loved those 2 characters since I was a little kid.
Yep.
And so this, to me, to see these characters come to life that I could have only ever imagined these worlds with a couple toys in my hands, you know, action figures, is just incredible. So I'm just blown away by the quality of it all and how much fun I'm having watching them unfold.
And I'm not going to remember who it was. One of the creators of, I believe, Spider-Man said in some of the behind the scenes making of footage that, because I'm the art geek, right? Like, these stories could not have been told properly, you know, 10, 15 years ago. Where CGI was, the things that you need to do to show such, I mean, their powers and space and all these visual things going on. You really couldn't have done it justice before. So now, from what we're able to do on screen with technology, it's really a perfect time to do it. So
Yeah.
I'm with you there. You're getting to see it in probably all of its glory.
I think, and that was kind of the heart behind George Lucas's heart behind episodes 1, 2, and 3 in the late 90s and the 2000s. It just wasn't quite there yet. And so those films kind of get mocked a little bit in hindsight for the CGI.
So much green screen.
There was so much green screen. I think his heart was in the right place. He finally could build out this universe the way he always imagined it.
Right.
But it just wasn't quite there. It doesn't hold up as well as some of the CG now will over time, in my opinion. So I think he gets kind of knocked on a lot for that, but I think his heart was in a great place, and he just wanted to universe build a little bit bigger than he could in the 70s and 80s, right? So we haven't actually spoiled anything yet, but here's kind of that point. I just want to say a few parts that I loved, and you can kind of throw anything in. And if you saw the movie, you'll know what we're talking about. But really, to see literally all of these characters show up for this final battle with Thanos, and there's so many other scenes in this movie that were incredible. As a huge Captain America fan, when Cap is finally able to grab Thor's hammer and use it in the battle, I think that's got to be the most incredible. Yeah. So if you don't know the backstory to why that's a big deal, it's like, well, it's a hammer. Anyone can use a hammer. The hammer has its own name. It's called Mjolnir, and the idea is the only worthy people in the universe can wield this hammer as a weapon or even lift it. Thor is the only known worthy person in the universe who can actually wield it. And even for a short period, he lost the ability to do so. Yeah. And at least in this story arc, in the comics, I'm sure there's lots of different things. But nobody could do that. And I think it's a great moment because eventually you'll see, huge spoiler, Tony Stark has to sacrifice himself. So Iron Man sacrifices himself to end Thanos and end this whole thing and restore the universe, at least in one form or another. It's yet to be seen whether it's exactly the same. But I think it speaks so much to early on in these movies. Cap and Iron Man are obviously recurring characters that are sort of jabbing at each other, and we see that more through Civil War. It's incredible because if you go all the way back, some of their criticism of one another, Tony criticizes Captain America or Steve Rogers, saying, you're the only thing that makes you special is a serum that made you Captain America. And the criticism from Cap to Tony is, you're not the one to make the sacrificial play. And after 11 years, we get to see the culmination of the opposite of those projections happening. Tony does make the sacrificial play. Steve Rogers is worthy, not because of the serum, but because Mjolnir has said that he is in this universe.
And so for me, just for a moment, that's the part I get fired up about, because I love the art of storytelling and well-developed characters and the arcs that they go through over the course of either a film or a film franchise. So for me, I mean, I knew that because I had seen it, but when you pieced and reminded me of those initial sort of jabs at one another when they were butting heads and there was sort of the egos were at each other, it's like, that's what makes good storytelling, right? Is just that beautiful arc because at the time that was true. I mean, the first couple Iron Man movies, you just see this playboy, selfish, egocentric Tony Stark.
Literally character struggling with alcoholism, which is not your normal superhero arc.
Right.
I mean, literally very real issues that he's struggling with to what we see in Endgame. And I was watching a little behind the scenes with the Russo brothers. If you don't know who they are, they're writers and directors that got to work on what ended up being probably 5 or 6 of these films. I might be wrong on the exact number, but they were ultimately in charge of several of the Captain America movies and then the 2 final Avengers films that we've seen. And they said it was just such a great way. We really see Iron Man kicking off this universe. And at the end of the movie, unlike any other superhero, he says, I am Iron Man. And you've got Thanos at the end of Endgame saying, I am inevitable. And then the final moment for Tony is him saying, I am Iron Man again, just to cap off this whole 11 years. And it was just such a cool kind of recap. If you get a chance to look it up on YouTube, the Russo brothers talking about their biggest moments in the MCU. And it was just such a great way. And he's saying the same thing, but the words mean completely different things. You go from ego to sacrifice with the same phrase, and it was just, what a cool way to wrap up this. And this kind of storytelling and any other medium that wasn't superhero, or not medium, any other type of plot that wasn't about superheroes would be award-winning type.
Yeah.
Like writing, this is incredible stuff. And I think just because it's got a superhero, sticker on the face of it, it'll get nominated for visual awards and things like that. But I just loved it. So that for me was kind of all I really wanted to make sure I shared. It was just such a wonderful way to wrap up 11 years. And there's so many other great moments. There's some great recaps. If you haven't seen the movie yet, you can go on YouTube and find all the movies recapped. But honestly, if you're into that at all, go back and watch the movies. My wife and I were just talking about how much we want to start rewatching. So by the time Endgame comes out on Blu-ray or DVD or whatever, we can watch that again after having watched them all.
Well, back to the art geek piece. I mean, so one of the most famous aspects of comics, and I never really read comics. I was more of the guy who I looked at the pictures in the splash pages. Splash pages are the pages where like both pages folded out and made one entire scene. One of the most common things in comics is when you see the both sides of two armies coming together to battle, like that moment right before they clash. So think of two huge teams from a profile view. This movie gave you that. There was one moment where you had all of the good guys going sideways toward the right, and all these heroes that have built for 21 movies, almost all of them, had built for 21 movies about to clash with Thanos' army. So from a kind of comic book geek and the art aspect of it, they gave you some of those iconic shots that you had longed to see the entire time finally happen. All these heroes, all these backgrounds, one moment running towards the enemy. That was, that was like...
I like that. Is there any discussion? Was afterward, is there anybody who thought that they were kind of selling out by saying, hey, the fans wanted this list of things and we're going to give it all to them?
I think that's a great question, and I think some of that fan service gets criticism and it gets praise.
I know, that's why I'm wondering what the talks are.
It's so weird. It's the same is true for Star Wars, right? Like some of the criticisms of JJ with Episode 7 was, oh, it's a fan service film. Well, as a fan, you're like...
Yes.
I don't envy the job that anyone at Lucasfilm has whatsoever. There's nothing you can do to make Star Wars fans happy. No one hates Star Wars more than Star Wars fans.
And I think there's a huge group of people where it would be the same people pissed off either way.
I absolutely 100% agree.
Yep.
Yeah, but I'll let you pick back up there.
No, that's a phenomenal point. Like, no one hates Star Wars more than Star Wars fans. That is so true. If you follow anything online, Reddit, any sort of anytime a trailer comes out, Star Wars fans, in quotes, are bashing it. The last one sucked. It's just like, then why do you...
There was so much backlash over The Last Jedi, which, again, if you're not savvy to the Star Wars universe, of the new trilogy, it was the middle film of the new trilogy. They changed directors to a guy named Rian Johnson, who happens to be a huge Star Wars fan. Lucasfilm still loves him, but that movie got so much backlash that it literally killed a lot of the momentum for Solo, A Star Wars Stories, which was a kind of spin-off film about Han Solo, which ended up being so much fun. I don't think they did anything groundbreaking in it, but Solo was so much fun. Yeah. And the fact that it didn't do as well at the box office, which might lead to them not doing potentially other spinoffs, just crushing. It was literally, you hear like the high risk, high reward phrase. That's exactly what Rian Johnson did in The Last Jedi. I have some things in it I didn't like. Overall, the movie was good. There were some things I didn't like, but it was absolutely high risk, high reward. If you knocked Episode 7, The Force Awakens from J.J. Abrams, for being too much like A New Hope and too safe, you're criticizing Rian Johnson for trying the exact opposite, which was trying high risk, which could potentially fail. I didn't love every element of it, but I applaud him for trying.
Yeah. Before we go too far down the Star Wars rabbit trail, because I want to talk the trailer that we just saw for Rise of Skywalker.
Oh, man.
Let's button up the Endgame stuff. So anything else that you want to say on just sort of your experience going in and coming out? Like, what did you feel?
Yeah, 3 hours felt like an hour and a half. I mean, it was incredible. That movie flew by. There was nothing I didn't love about it overall. It was funny. Somebody told me somebody had seen it before I did, and I said, the only question I have is, I'm just out of pure curiosity, what percentage of the movie is actually action? You expect an 11-year buildup to be mostly action. He said, I don't know, 30%. I was so surprised, and I didn't care one bit. I was almost a tiny bit disappointed before I saw it, thinking, how can only a third of this? That sounds like a lot, but it didn't matter whatsoever. Incredible movie. I was sad to see, it was such a great moment with Hawkeye and Black Widow. One of them has to sacrifice themselves to keep the plot moving forward and for the heroes to try to win. Ultimately, Black Widow won in that, and she sacrificed herself so that Hawkeye could go back to the team and keep fighting. I really enjoy that character. I think Scarlett Johansson did a great job. She's still getting her own movie, which would have to be a prequel at this point, based on what we know. But so there was definitely some important character deaths. Tony Stark. I just think they handled it so well. As somebody who loves Captain America, that ending for me is very satisfying. If you don't remember or haven't seen it, obviously go watch it first. But they're messing with time. They're traveling in time to try to defeat this villain. And Captain has to go back in time to help kind of defeat Thanos. But while he's there, he stays there and is able to live his life with the character he's loved since the beginning that he didn't get to live out his life with the first time. But he was able to this time. And one of the other characters...
Are you getting a
little bit choked up? Yeah, I love Cap. Like, this is like as much as I love like Obi-Wan from the Star Wars universe, I'm Cap for... and it was just such a sweet... If you watch those movies at all, you were heartbroken when it didn't work out with him the first time, and you loved it that he was able to connect. And you know that means because he's old man Rogers now, he's probably not going to be around anymore. You know, they're probably not reversing that, but it was such an awesome way for him to end. I don't care.
Well, that makes sense for you, and I'll edify you here a little bit by saying you're a very old soul. You're very chivalrous. Like, if you could bring back the Knights of the Round Table and old school King Arthur chivalry, you absolutely would. That's how you live your life. So it makes sense that meant a lot to you, because Captain America leaves in his current age to go back and basically make some extra things right. And he's supposed to come back in a matter of seconds back through this basically. It's the equivalent of a time machine. Well, he doesn't come back, and they're like, what went wrong? What went wrong? Off in the distance, there's a park bench. And so he basically just showed up back at that spot, but as an old man. And your initial reaction is, oh no, did something go wrong? And then you go, no, he went back to Agent Carter, and he just lived his life with her and gave her that last dance that he promised her. And he just chose to live out the rest of his days in that storyline, in that slice of the timeline. And he's sitting on this bench as an old man. And there's a great line where Falcon says he sees the wedding band, and he says, "Do you want to tell me about her?" And he goes, "No, I don't think I do." I mean, what like a classy, cool, chivalrous.
Yeah, he's just got
cool
such
thing.
He's got such a great arc, and there's so many. He has so many great moments, and you know if you're a fan, you know that I could do this all day. Comment, you know, you've seen it in enough movies. And even that comment, the Russo brothers talked about how that line also changed its meaning over time. Before he was injected with the serum, he was this weak, small, scrawny kid that was just willing to stand up to a bully in an alley. And he said, I could do this all day while they're fighting, even though he's just getting pummeled. And then, you know, eventually he's fighting his friend Tony, and there's sort of insurgent moment where he's pushing back against Tony and sort of against the establishment of government overseeing superheroes and making them weaponized. And then you see that again where he's actually fighting himself in Endgame when they've gone in the past. And he's saying this younger, sprightly version of himself in Captain America costume, saying it to a much older, wiser version of himself. And so even that line changes meaning so much. So if you're a Cap fan or a Tony fan, this was just such a satisfying movie to watch. And all these other characters that did survive, you know, hopefully we'll get to see them continue on. But it really felt like this finale to the story of Tony Stark and Steve Rogers. And so
all of the Marvel movies have always had a post-credit scene and then sometimes a post-credit scene. This one had neither of those. So, well, hopefully you've already seen it if you've listened this far. But what was cool, though, was at the very end, there's a little bit of a sound bite, which is the sound of what sounds like a hammer hitting metal. Because they played with time and the idea of what's the ribbon called?
It's essentially, if you think of how they describe time, think of it like that infinity ribbon or the figure eight, like that's kind of how time moves in that cyclical pattern.
There's an important name for it. It's like, anyway. So the idea is that it's ending where it started again when Tony is making that very first Iron Man suit to escape being a prisoner. So it kind of ends, or some people are, speculation goes awry with things like this. Some people are speculating, was that Harley, the boy from Iron Man 3 who we see in Tony's funeral scene at the end of Endgame, is that Harley making another Iron Man suit, and is he going to pick up the mantle and become the next Iron Man? So there's probably different layers of meaning, but kind of a fun little
that's
thing.
Probably more headcanon than anything else. If that's I guess that term, if you're not familiar, it's things you want to be true of the thing that you love, and you'll accept it internally because you want it to be true. So I think that's probably headcanon for fans, that they'll accept that because that's what they want it to be.
It's probably why it's there too. Means nothing but that.
Hey,
let's make him think about this for a while.
Yeah, the kind of head of Marvel who's overseen this whole thing, kind of unprecedented rollout, Kevin Feige, or I'll say Feige, I'll say it wrong, but Kevin Feige, somebody asked him about the hammer, and I don't think it had meaning. I think it was just like a fun nod.
There are some fun things in geek culture where the creators have accepted sort of the canon that gets picked up online, and they sort of go, sure, that's true.
Yeah.
And they quote unquote make it official.
Yeah. You'll hear the term retconned for that. It's retroactive continuity. They'll add it in after the fact because it works.
And one of those things I think has been made official is when the little boy who's at the Stark Expo in the Iron Man suit, some fans online wanted that really badly to be Peter Parker. And then the creators go, yeah, sure, that was Peter.
It's been retconned now.
It's been retconned. It's official. That's
better than what we were thinking.
And I think a fun one for Star Wars, if you are a fan of the prequel trilogy and the animated Clone Wars series, all kind of tie into that prequel era. One of the clones that kind of ends up being a favorite of a lot of fans, Rex. If you remember, we'll come back to him. If you remember the Battle of Endor at the end of Episode 6,
Return of the Jedi.
One of the rebels has this big kind of scruffy white beard when they're all kind of standing together, and that's been retconned as an aged clone who was able to break out of the clone aging process. That is Rex now, and it's been retconned as one of the clones. So it's kind of fun if you were into that prequel era. But that's another good example if you follow Star Wars that closely. That we're not speaking from the middle on that one. You'd have to be a fairly big fan to appreciate that. But it's certainly a cool another example of that.
Any comments before we move from Marvel on the Spider-Man trailer that came out?
I think the Spider trailer was really interesting. You see him kind of reeling from the death of Tony Stark, and he's got to go back to being a kid for a little bit because he's literally dealt with universe-ending consequences, and that takes a toll. We're meant to assume that takes a toll on anyone emotionally, let alone the Spider-Man character who's literally a teenager in high school. And I think for a lot of those geeky fans that when it didn't used to be cool, Spider-Man is one of the most relatable characters because I think everyone could relate with being the nerdy kid in high school, to some degree, or feeling picked on or bullied. And that's why he tends to be one of the most beloved from that era of fans that comics weren't cool and these movies weren't cool.
Right.
They could relate a lot. So the trailer on its own, it's going to be weird. I don't know how spoiled we are after these massive universes going back to these small stories with small implications.
Single character, arcs. Is that going to feel? Are you going to leave wanting? Right. Like, we just had these big epic films, and now we're back to a different pace. And pacing, it's in a way, are they competing with themselves, Marvel? Because you go from huge, massive implications, tons of characters, back to one at a time, single challenges, villains that are far less powerful, you could argue. And is that going to feel weird?
Yeah, I guess we literally don't know yet. I mean,
sure.
no one's seen the next Spidey yet, and I think they've opened up because of some real world business acquisitions. They're going to have access to X-Men and the Fantastic Four going forward to work off those characters, and So I think it'll be interesting to see what Marvel does. I'm certainly along for the ride. They've certainly earned my trust and loyalty for a while with the stories they've been telling. I'm going to keep seeing them. So.
Since you've helped our listeners with the term headcanon, so one fun thing that somebody posted online was when you realize that the gamma radiation that 3 snaps from the gauntlet would have had, that must mean that mutants are now going to start popping up in a significant part of the population. Now that we know that Marvel has the X-Men, again, that could be how we segue into a new version of the X-Men.
Very likely. Yeah, if that whole thing feels unfamiliar, this whole buildup was for that big gold glove with all those fancy rocks in it. Mm-hmm. And when you snap it and change the universe 3 or 4 times, that's going to change the sort of nature of the universe is what's implied in the films. And so it offsets some kind of or outputs some kind of radiation that could in theory be the creation story for why mutants start arising, mutants referring to X-Men, why mutants start showing up in this Marvel universe. So
do you think that maybe along those lines that Marvel will dabble into and then maybe find some success in creating actual brand new superheroes that do not have a comic book canon of any kind to nod back to? And
yeah, I think it's hard to come up with a unique set of powers and background that haven't been explored, but that doesn't mean they shouldn't do it. Mm-hmm. I think if they can do it in a way that's well written and makes sense, absolutely go for it. Because you get some discussion. I'm not picking sides on anything, but you get some discussion about, should this character be recast in a way they never were in the comics for the sake of inclusion or diversity? I'm going to leave that to everyone else to decide. But I think you could certainly take the opportunity of creating new characters to introduce new backgrounds and peoples to the world that we've never, or creatures or whatever that we've never seen before. Mm-hmm. And so I'm all for, at this point, again, they've earned enough trust that if they decided to create an entirely new group of heroes or a hero, I'm going to want to go see it because they've done such a good job of storytelling and character development at this point. So absolutely, now's the time. If you want to try to get away with it, these movies are still popular. They're still making money. You've built up a lot of fan trust. Go for it. Do it. Absolutely.
Or maybe you end up killing that trust.
You might, but I think at some point they even have to know, like, this might end sooner than we expect. I mean, right. The big buildup has happened. Everyone's seen 11 years worth. How many more origin stories are people going to pay to see? Maybe now's the time to try it.
Yeah, I stopped at 2.
Yeah, exactly. And there's other streaming mediums they can use as well. So they don't have to paint these on, the big screen. They could do some of this stuff on small screen, smaller budget, 6-episode arcs, see if it works streaming. Yeah. If it does, keep expanding. They don't have to go straight to movie.
Yeah, well, kind of like how Star Wars has used other mediums to kind of like fill in gaps and
and
that kind of thing.
I think absolutely. So I think that's probably a good place to like end the discussion around Marvel because we're leaving it kind of open to maybe pick up another time. But I think they're all great questions. We'll have to wait and whoever's going to watch Spider-Man, and we'll revisit. Because I think Rise of Skywalker, I've already said, like, this is a huge year. I've gotten to see Endgame. I can't wait to see Rise of Skywalker, Star Wars Episode 9, and we're all Star Wars fans, so I'm happy to jump in there.
Before that, though, like, Kendall, for you, like, what's some of your favorite character development in really any medium? I mean, film, TV, books. Like, we talked about, like, those big, overarching... I think right away Breaking Bad comes to mind if you've seen that
I've seen Breaking
show.
Bad. Yeah, no, Breaking Bad is an amazing example of character development.
What does that mean to the layperson that doesn't maybe like analyze film? I know it sounds kind of obvious, but maybe it isn't.
Yeah, the way I view it is you've got sort of person A and person B, and over the course of time, you get to see exactly how that occurred. So, like, I'm not the same person I was 20 years ago. I'm a far cry from it. And we can know that and understand that. But, I mean, it would take you some time and understanding to realize what made me the way I am. And I think that interests people to sort of see that transition, that transformation, Right. And so, and if you relate that to storytelling, then what you want to do is, for the sake of making it interesting, you want to pick extreme examples.
Right. So I would
people's
actually
lives.
knit your visual picture there and say A to Z, right? Or
Right.
instead of A to B, like
Yeah, no,
because A to
exactly.
B is a small step. A to Z, you go, oh, I'd never be Z.
Right.
But I want to see the ways that Walter White slowly becomes Z, and those moral, what do you call that? When you make a moral sort of compromise to slowly become Z, you're like, oh, I kind of would have
Yeah.
taken those.
So
small
Walter
steps.
White is our Breaking Bad,
Yeah.
our primary character in Breaking Bad. And if you had to give like the quick couple sentence version, how does he start and how does he end? Like what type of person is he? I know that's complicated, but if you had to give the TV Guide version of this transformation for kids, TV Guide was a place that you could go look and see what was
It
on
used to be.
television. I just realized I'm explaining retcon. I might have to explain TV Guide.
I saw a meme the other day that was like, kids today do not understand the concept of trying to get up and go to the bathroom and get a snack over the course of a 3-minute commercial break, and you need to hear your sibling, if you're not back yet, yells, "It's back on!"
Yeah.
And so you run and do a flying leap over the couch just so that you can be back in time, and you
Yeah.
tell that to your kids
Yeah.
today, and they're like, so why couldn't you just pause it?
Oh, it
Yeah.
does not
It's like,
compute.
oh,
Yeah.
my sweet
TV
child.
Guide, small magazine, would tell you about all kinds of shows and movies and what times they were going to be on, things like that. You actually had to literally flip through it because you didn't even have a TV Guide if you still have cable.
Right.
That was even the tail end of my experience. But anyways, if you had to give the abbreviated version of this character arch, Walter White, we're talking about from Breaking Bad, what would be the best way to describe? How does he start? Let's start with that. Who is he at the beginning in a sentence or two?
A chemistry teacher.
He's a white bread, boring chemistry teacher, family man,
And who is he at the end
No
of the
money.
film? Without the middle, who is he at the end?
an evil drug lord.
Yeah.
And what's the sentence or two that explains that whole arch? What gets him from white bread, boring teacher to evil drug lord?
He can make more money making drugs with his chemistry experience.
He's dying,
Oh, there you go. Yeah.
and he's trying to
That's a
provide.
small part of the story.
He's actually trying to set his family up so that when he inevitably leaves this planet, they're okay. So that's why you're like, I would have made some of those same.
Yeah.
So
So-
nobody wakes up and goes, I'm going to be a drug lord. But you make a series of small decisions.
Yeah.
Andy Stanley is one of my favorite pastors, authors, speakers, and he has a book called The Best Question Ever. And I won't give away the point of the book, but it's a series of small decisions that gets you to the edge of the cliff that you've already made all those decisions to get you to the edge of the cliff. It doesn't take much of a stiff wind to knock you off the edge. I don't care who you are. You're going to make some of those same decisions because it is a series of decisions that has led you to that point.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so that's what's interesting about it is, again, oh, that's horrible. I would never do that. Yeah, but would you do this? But would you do this?
Yeah.
But would you do that? And you're like, I kind of think I would.
Yeah.
Because, again, his intentions are good. He wants to take care of his family. But the moral compromises he makes to get... It's so fast. That's some of the best storytelling I've ever seen. It's pretty graphic. It's pretty gory. It's pretty...
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's...
Well, I think that's a great breakdown for anyone who hasn't really maybe sat and analyzed characters from some of their favorite films or TV shows or novels or magazines or comics or whatever. But that's really we all are so interested in that arc and watching that arc unfold that I think it's great. So that comes back to your question. You guys, we were asking about character development, plot development. What are some of those characters? So Walter White from Breaking Bad.
Yeah, that's a great one.
I already said Cap and Tony. We had these huge story arcs and character development around them. So those are a couple I mentioned.
I mean, you could say Rick from The Walking Dead. That's another great example. Any character in The Walking Dead, really. I mean, that show, if you just explain that show on the surface to somebody, yeah, it's a zombie apocalypse, you already lost some people.
Right.
But with the quality of storytelling for each of those characters, I don't care who you are, if you give that a chance and you start to begin to see the way that these characters are thoughtfully written to and the decisions that they make along the way, and if it all ends tomorrow, who's going to sort of like hole up and try to build one really cool space, and who's going to go looking for other people. It's kind of that, what would I do in that situation? So that's another good example. Jax from some Sons of Anarchy, that was another great show.
Oh, that was a beautiful show.
I mean, and that's based on a lot of Shakespeare, right? So so those characters are archetypes of Shakespearean novels and plays.
I think another big example to tie in one of my fandoms, the hobbits from the Lord of the Rings. The development that you see in those characters from their very humble, lively, kind of Shire experience to the end of the film. They're just vastly different characters they were, especially Sam and Frodo, vastly different characters than they were at the beginning of the film.
I feel like, that maybe this is like character development is sort of the central, like if it was a great franchise in medium, whatever it is, it was because of character development.
Yep.
Just is. I think recently, if there's, I don't know. This is going to be very niche. But so I've been going through the Ender universe books. Yeah. Because he's still writing them. If you did not realize, there's like 16 books and he's still going.
Wow.
And so like a lot of people are aware of Ender's Game. I know people who had to read that in high school even. I did not. I read it like a couple of years ago. But that main character, he's a kid in that book that everyone's familiar with. The very next book, he's an adult. And
in case our Syrian friends want to get into it, what's the quick version of that universe? What's going on in the universe? Quick.
So it basically in that universe, you have this situation of battling colonies that are of different species from different planets. And it's not so much, they're not like action books or anything like that. It's more along the lines of it's kind of more political and government, like it's very policy driven, and some of the main characters in those books are political figures.
Yeah. I think Game of Thrones, people were surprised how political that show really was.
Yeah.
I mean, there's some action, sure. There's some stuff that's adult friendly because it's HBO, but I think that's Game of Thrones. People were surprised how drawn they were to really, there's different houses in this quasi medieval universe and they're vying for power and it's all political movement. It's like a chess game. And so it sounds a little bit like what you're alluding to.
I think there's probably no listeners at this point who have read through the Ender Universe books. So I'm not going to talk about that anymore other than to say that maybe you should and then be my friend.
Yeah. Yeah. And then you guys can talk about it late at night. Yeah. In your matching pajamas.
That's awesome.
Great.
So Star Wars, we talked a little bit about, no one hates Star Wars like Star Wars movies. This one is J.J. Abrams again. Oh, yeah, Star Wars fans, thanks. No one envies the position J.J. Abrams because not only does he have to finish this most recent trilogy, it also has to be a standalone movie that works on its own accord, and it has to end something that started in 1977. And so he's really ending 3 trilogies, and he's ending 1 trilogy, and he has to make a successful standalone film.
Don't screw it up.
So my plea to my fellow fans is go in and give him some latitude.
For the love of Pete.
Because I don't envy wrapping up one of the biggest fandoms of all time 40 years after it started. Mm-hmm. Anyone can pretend like they could do it better than him, and I'm not saying he's necessarily even the best director, but very, very, very few people, probably less than a dozen or two dozen people on the planet, might be able to step in and oversee something this massive.
Why can't we just go, and I've been guilty of getting a little, I don't understand this, or this doesn't feel as fun or adventurous as some of the other films. But I like the way that one of our friends Jerry puts it. He's like, if it has Star Wars on it, and I was entertained for 90 minutes, why can't we just end there?
I think
why do we gotta?
I think the discussion starts in a good place in the sense that we're having fun sitting here talking about it. But then some people, are frustrated because it didn't go the way they wanted, or some people want to sound smarter and have some new different reason why it's cool or not cool or whatever. So I think it all comes from a good place. I think we want to all just have a chance to talk about the things we like to talk about. And hopefully it's entertaining enough for us and for other people that it's, for us, a podcast. But I think it kind of spirals out of control, much like many other things that, people want to talk about the thing they want to talk about, and then it turns into this is terrible, and they did a bad job, and this should have gone this way. And, it's not a reasonable discussion. It becomes sort of exasperated.
Yeah. So we know this is going to be the end of the Skywalker story, that family lineage anyways. We've seen the trailer. There's some fun little teasers in the end. We've got the cackle of Emperor Palpatine, who we've thought was long gone. So we're not quite sure what that means.
Nobody dies.
Nobody dies. Do we want to speculate, or
I really only have one thought from the trailer that's worth sharing. I don't think Palpatine is actually alive. That might not sound that shocking. I think some of the other cartoon animated Star Wars stuff has been alluding to the idea of holocrons. Essentially, a holocron in the universe as it's been established is some kind of artifact that has a force-driven draw to the light side or the dark side. Mm-hmm. So it's an artifact of the Jedi or an artifact of the Sith that's sort of imbued with this sense of light or dark. So I don't think it's actually going to be that he's alive, but I think there's going to be some of these artifact type elements that are tied to Palpatine, and they're going to sense him, or some history is going to come up, and it's things that are going to come from that era that are going to tie to the idea of Palpatine having left behind. It's a little bit the Horcrux in Harry Potter films. It's a little bit Voldemort has imbued himself into some of these things. I don't necessarily think it's what's keeping the Emperor alive or Sith alive or anything like that, but I think the Force has sort of been imbued into these items either from a light or dark standpoint. So I think there's going to be some kind of adventure or almost national treasury type feel, but in the Star Wars universe, where they're going to seek these sort of things that will somehow solve what's happening in the universe. So that's kind of what I think is being teed up for the fans.
Yeah, I think that kind of makes sense. When we talk about the Palpatine laugh, because I think that it would be very ballsy for them to head up to the final trilogy of trilogy film and introduce a new loophole of some kind.
Yeah.
Like saying, hey, you know about that Ghost Jedi thing?
Yeah.
Well, here's this other thing that we haven't told you about until the last movie.
Really?
I don't think that fans would buy that, and I think they know that fans wouldn't buy that.
Yeah. Do we want to speculate on the subtitle?
I think this is going to be backstory, not a new Skywalker. I think on this adventure, they're talking about the rise of the Skywalker lineage. I don't think they're referring to a new Skywalker, in my opinion. I think this is going to be tied into history, and that's how they're going to rope in these other trilogies. These artifacts, I think that's how it works them all together. Maybe there's flashbacks, maybe there's discussion of previous events and eras. I don't think it's I think it's referring to the past and the rise of the Skywalker. Maybe even it was Palpatine who created Anakin instead of the light side of the Force. Maybe it was Palpatine using the dark side of the Force to create the Skywalker.
Some
lineage.
big answers from the past that we've longed for.
I think they're going to use that story of the Skywalker line to finish it out, not introduce anything new.
And a fun way to end it by saying the rise of, right?
Right.
Sure.
We're ending it by talking about how it started.
Yep. Yeah. So I think that would be a nice nod back to whether there's just a few references or maybe some flashbacks to other eras that would loop it all together and really kind of tell these characters really where they came from by learning about how their universe sort of evolved with all these events happening.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I got emotional when the music kicked in right after she jumps over the fighter and that the little thing swoops into the cityscape scene. I got emotional at that music. John Williams. I mean, is this is this John Williams?
I think so. I think this is the last film.
This is the last one, right, for him?
I think we could be wrong, but
I think I actually read somewhere that, I don't know,
That he was done.
that he was done.
Right, but there was a guy that was sort of honoring sort of some of his score emotion.
could be. I think Michael Giacchino, I'm probably saying that wrong. That's who did Rogue One.
Yeah.
They might have reused him. I don't know. We can maybe look that up while we're talking. But that's got to be one of the biggest elements of Star Wars as a whole, if you're looking at it objectively, is the music. I mean, there's iconic soundtracks. In one way, the Marvel Universe was kind of unwilling to project these huge scores. They had some great music, but it was kind of more subtle. Star Wars has done an amazing job at having these really big, triumphant pieces of music.
Awesome.
Played down a little in Rogue One because it wasn't an episode, so to speak. It was a spinoff. But I think that segue into music being such an integral part of what those movies are speaks to all of us because we're all very much into music. I mean, that's a big overlapping part of that,
For sure.
that interest for all of us.
I think we'd be remiss if we didn't mention the passing of Peter Mayhew. Recently, you and I got to meet him in Indianapolis at Star Wars Celebration 3, right before the release of Revenge of the Sith. The dude had a line of geeks wanting his autograph and wanting to shake his hand, and he treated every single person like they were the only person in line. He shakes your hand. When that man, for those of you that don't know, he was the actor who, starting in 1977, wore the Chewbacca costume and was Chewbacca in all the films. And when that dude, he was 7 foot, I don't even know, but when he shook your hand, his hand just enveloped your whole hand, and it was so sweet and just really took time with you, even though he had a huge line of people. And it was like an honor to say that I got to meet him and get his autograph. And
Yeah, I hate to say gentle giant because, it feels derogatory, but I think that would be such a great way to describe him just quickly to somebody who's like, that's exactly, it was that big teddy bear, just sweet, not necessarily wide big, but, very tall and slender. He wasn't at all. He was tall and slender, but just that had that feel though, because he just was such a presence.
Yeah. So rest in peace, Mr. Mayhew. It was an honor to meet you, sir. Anyway, I'm excited to see it. It's going to be awesome. I'm kind of adopting more and more the just like, our dad sort of has that policy with movies too. Like, hey, was I entertained for 90 minutes? Yeah. And so much has built to this one, and it's become such the storytelling and the characters. I mean, my kids love it too. I'm so excited to take them and see it through their eyes, because I didn't grow up during a trilogy. I was born in 84, so I was born between the two trilogies. So the fact that they're kids, while these things are coming out, we make it a big event, and we go to see the midnight release, which, by the way, how are they allowed to show these movies earlier and earlier and earlier the day before? It used to be midnight meant midnight.
Money.
You went the midnight release.
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah, the rules can change if...
dollars?
Don't release the movie till this day. Well, what if I can send you a check for this much more money?
So now they start, at 4 p.m. the night before it's actually coming out. I mean, and it helps box office numbers too. Right. Did Endgame demolish everything, by the way? It was
closing in on $2 billion last time I heard. I don't know what it's at now. We can pull that up, but it was an obscene amount of money.
Right, but there's not even, what's the...
I think Avatar was still ahead of it, but I would imagine it'll beat it. We can pull it up.
Hey, guys, those Avatar sequels got delayed.
Yeah, look, I mean, I'm not a very critical fan for most things like you. I can just go in and watch something, but it's Space Pocahontas, okay?
Let's call it what it is.
Let's call it what it is. It's Space Pocahontas. It was visually stunning. It was part of the resurgence of 3D, but nothing about the new ones is going to be visually stunning again. Because there hasn't been that big of a jump in CG between when that one released and what will come. Space Pocahontas 2 through 5 are going to look about the same. Go see it there are some people that are crazy into that universe. Awesome. God bless you. Go watch it. Have a ball. I don't need to see Space Pocahontas repeated 4 more times.
When somebody shared on Facebook that the sequels were delayed, I was like, "Oh yeah, Avatar."
That was a thing that
That
existed
was
a while ago.
movie.
Yeah.
And some people were like, "Yeah, the best thing that came out of that was a really cool ride at Animal Kingdom
Yeah.
at Disney."
Remember when we talked about character development? That didn't happen.
That didn't happen.
In Avatar, and really, I'm not chatting. James Cameron obviously knows what he's doing. He's immensely
For sure.
wiser than I am. But those movies were meant to be visual spectacles, not character-driven, universe-building films. It was Space Pocahontas. It was fine. It was great to see the amount of colors and light and things that they did was incredible. Don't need to see any more. I saw the first.
Which you perfectly... Go ahead.
Oh no, I've just got Endgame numbers. It set the record for the highest opening weekend, $2.5 billion.
$2.5
Yeah,
billion dollars.
Box office says 2.5 billion worldwide as of right now. So, just absolutely insane. And that's some more money will trickle in, but it's probably not
The
going to
fastest cumulative grosses of any movie. That's another record it has set. So it is, profited quicker than anything else.
Wow.
Yeah,
And it wasn't cheap to make, right?
yeah. Robert Downey Jr. pulled in half of that in salary. So
Yeah.
To your point, though, about the visual masterpiece that Avatar was, that just goes back. I think one thing we've proven is story is king. That is the mantra at Pixar. That's why I'm I'm the art school geek and the artist illustrator. My dream job was Pixar. I think that's why they are so successful, because story really is king. DreamWorks can excel, and I'm not comparing, but DreamWorks can excel in the visual aspects of it and the technology and the ways that they render water better than anybody else. But you look at the opening of Up. I mean, the first 5 minutes of that movie with 0 dialogue, that's some of the best storytelling.
yeah.
And that's why Pixar, I mean, some have done better than others, but making story king and really being relatable.
Also, and since we're such music people, think about some of the most successful Pixar films and the music. You can start playing that music in your head from some of the best films because you remember some of those sort of auditory montages, whatever they're called. You remember some of these moments and the music that went with them, and that Up and how everything is sweeping and kind of slows down. And it's just the power of music and how they use it in those films. And some of the more popular ones, I couldn't recall the Cars music,
Right.
but I can hear Up in my head.
Yeah.
And I can hear Toy Story in my head.
And the Imperial March.
And the Imperial March, and it's that there's just some things that just cut through all the noise and that just settles and you feel it. And I think that's why I said if there's one fault of Marvel, they didn't keep reusing some of these huge built-up moments with music. They kept Captain America's theme so subtle when they didn't have to, and they used the Avengers theme a good amount, but not as much as it could have to really make these huge, sweeping, impactful moments with music. And there's I love movie scores. Hans Zimmer obviously does a lot of stuff, but one of his albums is called The Wings of a Film. And that's it. That's the scores behind these movies that we love, and it absolutely is true. It's the thing that gives movies their flight and what helps them take off. And think about some of those movies and things that we love, and think about the music in them. Lord of the Rings had an incredible score. If you're into that, and then even lesser known films now, Legends of the Fall is a huge one, and Cider House Rules has a really popular soundtrack as people go back and listen. But there's just some amazing soundtracks that don't get enough credit. I think the music people are so underrated behind some of these films, because we see all these amazing visual elements that always get talked about, and the music doesn't always. I think we do from an artist standpoint. If you're John Legend, you're going to get recognized. But if you're
Springfield, Ohio, John Legend.
Yeah, longtime friend of the show, John Legend. But if you're in the orchestra score for Star Wars, John Williams gets a lot of credit, but these musicians are incredible.
Speaking of giving props to musicians, shout out to Samson on SoundCloud.
Yes.
His song Movement is, we took a clip for that for our intro for our show. And so shout out Samson on SoundCloud.
Thanks, dude.
Word.
Anything you want to add? I'm the non-musician weighing in on music, and Kendall, you're a musician.
No, I like
it.
it. Music is something that that kind of universally speaks to people's souls, I think.
Yeah.
And you don't need to know a language, or like you can put people on the same page just by playing music, and it's got an ability to just support emotion in a way that I don't think anything else can.
Yeah.
Are you surprised then by people who are like, yeah, I don't really listen to music?
Not really, because to be honest with you, I don't. So I'm a music fan, and I read some about music. I certainly listen to music, but I know people who I'm a worship leader, so I play music and
you
and
do
that
it
kind of
you
thing.
do it well, might I add.
And I don't listen to music nearly as often as what a lot of people might think I would.
Yeah.
And I think that surprises a lot of people, because there's if you look at the amount of hours spent listening to music, I'm probably very casually average. So I would say this about people who say I don't listen to music, that no, it doesn't surprise me, because I think that if I wasn't otherwise involved in it as an active hobby of playing it and that kind of thing, I would probably be less interested in seeking music out and sort of spending time that way. I like I said, I tend to listen to other podcasts and things like that in my background noise, and so oddly enough, when I listen to music, listening to music for me is more of this is what I'm going to do for a little bit.
Yeah.
So I don't have it in my ears all the time. It's I'm going to sit down and listen to this album. That kind of thing. But I think there's a lot of people who are affected by music and they just don't realize it.
Yeah.
Right? And so marketers have known that for a long time, that people are affected by music. That's why it's playing in department stores, and that kind of thing. And that's why it's in movies, and that kind of thing. So I can understand people not necessarily seeing music as a hobby. I still think music affects them. I think that, music can even manufacture emotion, which, from a worship leader's perspective, is actually kind of a dangerous thing. But supporting emotion's a good thing.
It's a big debate in the worship community, right? Like, we don't want to manufacture people's reaction to what we're doing here.
Right.
So, good stuff, guys. A lot of good discussion. Anything we want to add?
I think there's so much more to the music thing. We'll do another time, because
100%.
I love discussing the idea of, this isn't an era where we put a record on a record player while hipsters do. We don't put a record on a record player and sit in a chair in the middle of the room with two stereo towers playing at you. But we consume so much more music, and it's this ambiance to our lives that, through streaming services and whatever, it's just there all the time. So I think I definitely want to come back to that in another episode, because I think there's some really fascinating discussion there. But it's interesting. I would have fully expected you to be surprised by those that don't listen to music as a hobby. And so I appreciate your insight. I think that's really interesting.
This is fun, guys. We're getting to know each other.
Oh, it's so good.
I feel like I know you guys.
I feel happy. I think we got to cover some great stuff in Star Wars and Avengers and music, and just again, this is just going to be a continuation of the things we love, and we hope the listeners love it too. And that for me it's made it a blast. So,
signing out from Columbus, Ohio. This is From the Middle.